Drew is going to share with us some things about his work, and I want to say how grateful I am to B&H for allowing us to be here in event space. Everything we're going to talk about today as far as paper, as far as calibration is available here at B&H, but we're very, very grateful to be able to bring Drew here for you and present him, to be able to talk to you on a snowy, rainy, a little bit drear Monday afternoon in December. Well, thank you for coming today, and Drew, thank you so much for agreeing to do this. We're very grateful
much for having me.
And let's give Drew another hand.
Cool. Thank you all very much. So thanks so much for coming out and obviously for spending your Monday morning with me just before the holidays. I'm sure you probably have a couple better things to do, so I really do appreciate and honor the fact that you've come out here to spend some time with me. That's all right. Before we get started, obviously I want to say a huge thank you to ILFORD, X-Rite, and B&H for hosting this event. So we don't need to give them another round of applause, but thank you all very much for putting on this event. So to start, I'm just going to share with you, generally speaking, a brief overview of the type of work that I do as a photographer here in New York. I'm based in Brooklyn, and show you some examples of how and why I print my work after that. And then we're actually going to jump right in, and I guess a couple of you are going to get to print your own work. So as far as the really technical nitty-gritty, that's why we have these amazing folks over here. But I'm happy to entertain any of those questions. And if I don't know the answer, I'm not going to make it up. I could do that, but I'm going to pass it off to these guys and let them jump in on the really nitty-gritty tech stuff. But being from New York and having a bit of caffeine in me, I do tend to speak a little bit fast. So if I need to slow down or repeat anything, please do let me know. Oops, 1 second. There we go. So how did I start in this field? I got into photography without any idea whatsoever that it would turn into a profession like most of us. I've always been a live music fan and was a musician for a long time myself. I played drums in a band in Philadelphia for about 7 years. So I happened to be friends as I was growing up with an up-and-coming acoustic rock band called Guster. And like lots of young photographers and music lovers, I just liked the idea of taking photos of a band that I enjoyed, nothing more than that. And the interest really just grew from there. I photographed the band about 40 times over the course of a couple of years, probably 4 or 5 years. And I can't begin to tell you how many of those rolls of film, yes, I said rolls of film, were completely blank because my exposures were just so far off. I was very fortunate to have a mother who put up with that constantly and continued to pay for all of my black and white film developing. And even back then, my primary film that I used, different company I know, but ILFORD HP5 was like my film of choice. Such a great film, ILFORD or HP5 and Delta rather. But you know, so I started shooting film, and I think we'll get into this a bit later. But I think that is, to me, a huge part of why I appreciate the printed art form to this day. It's so important to me, and I'm not somebody who thrives on spending hours and hours in Photoshop. Obviously, certain things are necessary to make a print, but it's really not that hard, and we will get into that in just a little bit. So you don't have to be some crazy wizard to make a beautiful print. It's actually pretty simple and straightforward. But back to shooting, almost nothing that I shot of that band or in that time period you'll ever see, but that's okay. I mean, the fact of the matter is that's what taught me the basics of photography, right? The fact that I had a band, or any of you starting out might have a family member who you learn to shoot portraits of. Having somebody patient who lets you photograph them over and over again, that really just enables you to learn the craft, to learn the basics of exposure, composition, all that stuff. And the only way to get better at this, of course, more than anything, is just by doing this a lot. You can take class after class, but you all need to go out and practice what's being taught to you, right? That's the only way you're gonna get better at this. But I hope that this can inspire you and that you go home and actually do practice all this. So for my own work, the shoots that I typically get assigned to shoot are a pretty healthy mix of both candid and more produced portrait work. My approach is essentially the same for both of these, in that it's really just all about telling a story and striving to capture the essence of a person, even if they're not necessarily posing for me. Lots of my photos are also really based on breaking down barriers and building trust between the talent and myself. This is Brian Fallon. He's the lead singer of a band called the Gaslight Anthem, sort of a blue-collar Jersey rock band a la Springsteen. And I know that he's not a big fan of having his photo taken, like most people, right? Very few people love having their photo taken. I much prefer to be behind the camera. for a good reason. And he told me this when I first met him, just a couple hours before I shot this frame. After having some casual conversation backstage with him and finding out that we actually had some mutual friends, he let me into his green room and I shot this with available light. It's one of his favorite candid photos that he's ever had shot of him, and we've become really good friends and have worked a lot together since then, all because of this one frame. So one single photo really broke down a barrier and built a big friendship. And that's one of the truly most amazing things about being a photographer. I'm invited into people's lives because I'm pretty good with the camera. It's really something I don't take for granted, and very lucky to be able to do this. Sometimes the strongest photos in my work turn out to be the most candid moments. This was a shoot that I had with a group called the New Basement Tapes. T-Bone Burnett, the famous producer, was tasked on putting together a super group of to make songs for some unreleased Bob Dylan lyrics. So the group consisted of, I believe, 5 Grammy-winning musicians. On the left, we have Elvis Costello with the bass guitar, Marcus Mumford from Mumford Sons in the middle, and Taylor Goldsmith from Dolls on the right. There's 2 other members as well, but I had this huge, elaborate studio set up inside of the rehearsal space in Manhattan. But right before the shoot, I happened to peek out the door and saw this amazing sun that was bouncing off of this like crazy architectural glass building across the street, and had this really interesting pattern of sort of dappled light on the wall. So I shot inside for a few, and then I shortened that shoot by a couple of minutes. And keep in mind that most of my shoots with celebrities and musicians, I generally speaking have 5 minutes or less to photograph these people. So I'm there setting up well beforehand generally, but I have very, very little time with these folks. So in this case, I shot with them for probably 2 or 3 minutes inside, and then sort of begged them, say, hey, I have this idea, let's run outside real quick. And this was literally a test shot that I shot basically from the hip. So Elvis just happened to be walking across the frame, and I just sort of snapped this, and this is far and away my favorite frame of the shoot. And I spent like 4 hours setting up what I'd set up inside, and this involved absolutely no setup, no lighting. Go figure. I really lucked out with the light, obviously, but I like this infinitely more, and it involved no setup. I really thoroughly enjoy this style of shooting where I'm capturing a moment and creating a portrait by moving with the artist that I work with. And I love being able to mix this with much more well-produced, or not well-produced, much more produced in general, and often lit portraits. This was my first gig for Rolling Stone magazine. This is Roger Waters from Pink Floyd in the middle. This was a rehearsal that they were doing at SIR, this rehearsal space in Manhattan, with G.E. Smith on the left. He used to be the band leader from Saturday Night Live back, I guess, in late 90s, early 2000s, something like that. And they were doing a benefit concert at the theater at Madison Square Garden with a bunch of wounded warriors. So it was he, G.E. Smith, and a band made up of like 35 or 40 wounded veterans. So you can see the guy playing bass or guitar here in the wheelchair. So a really fascinating thing that they were doing, and I was invited in to shoot that rehearsal. Brian Fallon, once again, I was just on tour with him earlier this year. That's him walking into, I believe, a performance he was doing on the Colbert Show. This is Esperanza Spalding, a jazz bass player. I think she won 4 Grammys before she turned 30 years old. Pretty impressive. Something to live up to. She wasn't particularly comfortable being photographed backstage, so I had to be really kind of, quick and quiet about what I was doing. I positioned myself in a way that really utilized the backlight and made a beautiful silhouette out of, not that exciting of a scene. This was just before she walked back on stage to do the encore to concert. I shot this of the Preservation Hall Jazz Band warming up right before walking on stage at the Coachella Music Festival in California. Just as in the last photo, backlight can be a really gorgeous thing. So this is at the Bonnaroo Music Festival in Tennessee, I think about 2 years ago. Same thing here, shot backstage in Dubai of a backup dancer for a singer named Fataniza. Just one of those amazing found moments. I mean, I'm not gonna go and run and grab a softbox and set it up. The moment's gonna be gone. This is a moment that you capture this when you see this, and you hope for the best. Oftentimes my role in a shoot like this is really just to be as much of a fly on the wall as humanly possible. I had no more than 10 minutes with Tyler. He's the lead singer of a band called the Neon Trees. And the part of my job in these situations is really just to make sure that I don't interfere with whoever that I'm shooting. My job isn't to kill the vibe. It's really just to be there and document what's happening. Sometimes you get a really crazy phone call. Last year, I was asked to shoot stills during a video interview with President Obama in the White House. This was obviously not a place I could even think of using flash or being in the way. This was a video set, so I had to be incredibly quiet. And the kind of scariest thing on this shoot was that there's a video team set up with all kinds of lights all over the place, probably a 10-person video crew, myself and my assistant, and obviously Secret Service and the president and his staff. During that entire 20-minute interview, everybody is still because they're all at their video rigs and Secret Service is at the door. I'm literally the only moving part, which is a really weird feeling when you're like ducking down in front of Secret Service and you're like, is this okay? Sweating bullets. But one of the most amazing shoots a photographer can get. Here's some recent shoots I did for a Nikon campaign, actually. This is my friend Nigel, who's a rapper from Queens, shot this in Dumbo. Another friend of mine shot this for a more recent campaign in Astoria, again in Dumbo. And shot this in Nicaragua. I did another campaign where I was shooting sort of some beach and surf lifestyle stuff. This is in San Juan del Sur, Nicaragua. At the same time as those types of photos, lots of my work does involve more produced portraits where I've become very accustomed to lighting various scenarios, whether that be in a studio or on location. This is a country singer named Luke Bryan, shot this backstage. Ed Sheeran shot this in about 40 seconds in a hotel room before he decided to just walk, and these things happen. That's literally the one frame from the shoot that works. That's all you need, right? Absolutely. Here's a couple promo photos I shot earlier this year for a Grammy-winning musician named Mark Cohn. He sang that song Walking in Memphis, and he just released a 25th anniversary edition of the album. So he hired me to shoot some new promo photos for him. About 2 minutes with Spike Lee earlier this year. Shot these at SVA Theater. That, and as well as that. My buddy Ted, he's in a band called Mumford Sons. This was on the terrace of the Airbnb that he was staying in a couple summers back in Brooklyn. Even though this photo it's set up and it's lit, but the idea here is for it to look like an authentic moment. And a lot of the photos that I take, I do really strive for that. So, it comes down to, positioning people in a way that feels natural. And he was actually sitting there smoking a cigarette, but, he probably wasn't going to sit on the edge the way he was if he was just smoking a cigarette on his own. So, I sort of, modeled the shoot a little bit after what I was thinking of and set up a light, and that's what we got. My buddy Nigel, again, shot for another job at another location in Brooklyn. My friend Richard, he's a rapper known as Cakes Tequila, shot this in my living room, and it was run in Interview magazine. You don't need a crazy big studio. This is shot in like a 10 by 10 foot room. That's it, nothing more. Pretty simple. This is Andrea Bocelli, the Italian opera singer. James Bay, a British singer-songwriter, shot this a couple months back for the Associated Press. And then just on the other side of the room, shot this, so a very different lighting setup. Cool so far? Anyone? Cool, all right. I shot this, I guess about a year ago, of Mumford Sons. This shoot almost kicked my butt. I was allowed to, and this is like typical on these types of shoots, I was allowed to arrive at 9 a.m. to scout at this location and set up lighting. This was to do promo photos for their current album for the Associated Press. So when I shoot for the AP, my work, the idea is that a lot of musicians, celebrities, actors, actresses will come to the AP and they'll have a shoot with AP, and then that work gets syndicated all over the place. So magazines, newspapers all over the world subscribe to what's called the AP photo stream. So instead of a celebrity going and doing a photo shoot and an interview with 50 different magazines and newspapers, they'll do it in one place, then that work goes all over the place. So these shoots have a lot of pressure, to say the least. I knew that aside from their own promo photos that they were releasing, their official press shots, they did a shoot in LA with Billboard magazine and a shoot in New York with AP. That was it. So it's, there's few photos of them out there for the release, and there's a bit of a weight on you to produce good work. And also with AP, and one thing that I'll bring up, a little off subject, but when I'm shooting for AP or the New York Times for that matter, nothing that I shoot can be photoshopped. And when I say that, I mean there's no retouching allowed. I can do brightness, contrast adjustments, but I can't do any skin retouching. I can't comp in a background, nothing like that whatsoever. So brightness, contrast, black and white. That's my production photo, just to show you. That's my assistant up there, like very precariously on the fire escape steps, holding a diffuser over one of the biggest bands in the world, trying to flag the sun off of them, and not on camera flash, as you can see there. It's a big 5-foot softbox. But yeah, that's a pretty typical type of shoot that I get called in for. Another recent favorite, this is Tony Goldwyn of the show Scandal. He plays the president on the show, and for that reason, I wanted him to give me something that was very quiet and contemplative. I literally sat down, did that, showed him what I wanted him to do, and he had no problems running with it. And this is just a true testament to the amazing gift that we're given as photographers when we have someone in front of the camera that is on board with your ideas, gives you everything that you could hope for, and just really, he's so dapper, he's such a great looking subject, and just photographs incredibly well. Not all shoots are, some of it's luck, some of it's preparation, but yeah, sometimes it works out well. Shot this of Bonnie Raitt for her new album release a couple months back. Sweetest woman in the world, just wanted her to adopt me. She was amazing, loved her. This is another portrait of Esperanza Spalding, who you saw earlier backstage. This was just shot last year. The other one was shot probably 5 years ago. And she was amazing to photograph this time. She knew it was an actual photo shoot. She was prepped for it. She had styling and all of that. We were supposed to shoot inside the management company's office of hers. I forget where that was. You can probably tell looking at the photo background, but something like that. Yeah, sounds about right. Something like 23rd Street. But I found this rooftop just one floor up from her office, and I talked her into coming up there and made for such a better photo. Sometimes you're confronted with the awful corporate boardroom, shoot here. I try my very best not to. I really, really do. And there's a portrait of eight-time Grammy-winning hip-hop artist Kendrick Lamar. This was well below freezing outside, incredibly windy. I only kept him on this terrace for just a minute or two. This was the junior presidential suite at the Dream Hotel downtown, and I shot this for Reebok. But why am I showing you all this? Well, things look pretty great on screen, right? They do, but there's something so much, there's a feeling about when I see an actual tangible form of my work that I absolutely love. And as I said before, a lot of that comes down to, I think, the fact that I started in black and white film. And like you, Brenda, I remember that very first print I saw in my very first photography class, my freshman year of college, and the feeling I had, it was magic. If any of you, who here has printed in a darkroom? Most of you, great, cool, all right. I love, there's a friend of mine who shoots, he was for a time shooting weddings on film, shooting medium format Rolleiflex. He had 2 dual lens Rolleiflexes that he was shooting weddings on, which is quite a challenge. All obviously manual focus, and Rolleiflexes are not the easiest to use. And he loved shooting film. But what amazed me was he's probably 28 years old. He'd never been in a darkroom. I was like, wow, that's so interesting, right? He's shooting film, he loves film, but he's never actually processed a piece of film. He's never made a physical print. But in any case, when I see things on the computer screen, I never, it looks great. You show your work on an iPad, it looks amazing. But there's an art to a print, and I've really never felt 100% fulfilled seeing my work on screen. Obviously, I have a website and all of that stuff. And I think a lot of my clients, more than anything, they keep up with my work via Instagram and Facebook and Twitter and all that stuff, and my website. But the biggest successes that I have on any assignment at all are the ones where the final product ends up being in print. I'd so much rather see something for a magazine that I'm shooting go into their print issue than on their website. It just feels better. As a student, I spent countless hours in the darkroom printing and went through so many pairs of jeans because I had developer and fixer stains all over them, and I'd wake up with my hands scabbed because I didn't get the chems off of them at night and would just go right to sleep. I don't so much miss that, but there is something I really still to this day do sorely miss about the darkroom process. And as unrealistic as shooting film is to most of my current clients, because I do shoot a lot of editorial work and I have to have very quick turnaround times, sometimes within a couple of hours. That doesn't enable me to shoot film anymore. But printing my work, even digitally, really brings back a lot of that initial feeling that I think is really lost in the digital age. And transforming that digital medium into something tangible and analog just is a great thing. While I'm talking, I'm just gonna pass this around. This is just a random test print I had, but for any of you who don't print a lot, like this is printed on Ilford paper. That is just a print of that photo of my buddy Ted from Mumford Sons, just to like feel it, look at the quality, just like dive into the print. It's, we see so much information online and it goes by so fast. It swipes and clicks, and a print is something you actually spend time with, you want to spend time with. So I don't know, I think you'll start to see that today if you don't already. But as importantly is the fact that seeing our work in print really enables us to step away from the computer. And that's a huge thing. We all probably spend way too much time in Photoshop and Lightroom and what have you. And you kind of get numb to your own work sometimes, I think. And it's I don't know, I can only spend so much time editing. I'm not a retoucher. I don't love that process. To me, being a photographer is being behind a camera, and when that final step is a print, it's like that process is complete. So yeah, as much time as I can spend behind the camera, the better for me. But I really think that when you're able to step away from the computer and have a beautiful print to look at, that does somehow make us a better photographer, because it gives you time, you let the work soak in. And it's like, you know, I hate editing a job as soon as I shoot it. I like to actually let it sit for a while. And the same can be said for making prints. I like to print up as much of my potential portfolio or promo work as possible, hanging on a wall, and let it sit there before I make any final decisions on what's gonna happen. You know, there's like the old darkroom trips, like hanging a print upside down just to see its composition and all of that. And those things are still legitimately important. But making prints, obviously it involves a bit of a process. Color management is incredibly important. You know, these laptops, as fancy as they are, whether you're Mac or PC, whether it's a laptop or desktop, there's so many different variables that knock our computers out of whack. And they can tell you all the intricacies of that, but I mean, everything from temperature to humidity to the brightness level in your room, all of these things in time will make it necessary to calibrate your monitors. And, you know, printing is simple when you have certain things set up properly, right? If you go and you print right out of Photoshop with no knowledge, you might luck out, but to have consistency in making beautiful prints, there are some basics that you do need to know, and that's, of course, why we're here today, right? So to me, I mean, that's obviously keeping I have two monitors. I have two laptops, and I have an external monitor, a Wacom Cintiq, that I can do my editing right on. And that monitor and this monitor, I have to have in sync with each other, because your monitor and your printer need to be in sync in order to talk to each other properly to make beautiful prints. Otherwise, what's on your screen is going to be vastly different than what's actually coming out of the printer. So that, of course, comes down to using the proper printer profiles that, you know, go with our printer. And this is the very same printer I use at home. It's an amazing printer. But, you know, using simple calibration software that the folks over here make really just help you to have the beautiful photo that you see on the screen translate as seamlessly as possible to that tangible form right there. So I think that's incredibly important. Another thing as well, that's just a photo I'm passing around, but just to sort of show you this, I won't pass this around, but this is just my like formal print portfolio. This is what I go to meetings with when I'm meeting with an ad agency or an editorial publication. And having a print portfolio for me as a working professional in the field, I really think in a certain way, obviously the work has to be great, but I really do think that it sets me apart from other photographers who are showing their work on, say, an iPad or on a laptop. I think it exudes a certain level of professionalism. It shows that you've put in the time and effort, and sure, you could say money as well. But I really think that if there's a photographer of comparable work showing their work before or just after me, and they have work on an iPad, this right here is going to sell me and sell me really well, and hopefully get me great work because of that. So this is made by a company up in Maine. This amazing guy named Scott Mullenberg. He custom makes these. There's so many companies that, you know, everything from your very inexpensive, can't even think of the brands, but like your $20 sort of student portfolio, sort of a plastic binder with plastic pages, to something like this, which is, you know, obviously much more well put together. It's a very professional product. You know, he sends you fabric samples, and I send my logo, and he makes a plate, you know, and presses that all on there and all of that. So his name is Scott Mullenberg. The company's Mullenberg Designs. It's like a two-man, one-woman, one-man shop in middle of nowhere, Maine, and they just hand make them all and do an amazing job. He makes them for a lot of pro photographers, and then I have this nice like slip cover as well. So this is Smooth Luster Duo, so it's a luster sort of between a matte and a gloss. It's more matte than gloss, if that makes sense. But and I've printed on several different papers for my print book over the years, and basically this is in here. There's these little vinyl, or I don't know the material, vinyl plastic, little sticky pieces that you mount at the back of the sheets, and then that actually has the holes for the binding. And it's actually, I can change them out because it's a post right there. So I can change out the prints on the fly, which is great, because I do update this very often. And I will say that my first, I think, 2 iterations of my portfolio, I sent out to print houses. The first of which I had great success with, the second which was an utter nightmare. Part of that is the fact that, like you, I like to maintain control over the product that I'm putting out there. But it wasn't me being crazy, it was them, I honestly think, not setting up profiles properly, which amazed me because they were a pro print house. And at that point, after that experience, I got fed up and decided to start trying to print my own work. And honestly, I was quite overwhelmed by the idea of it. I had this amazing printer that I had barely used, and within very little time, I was making gorgeous prints. And it's not like I went through some master class. I mean, there are true master printers out there. I would never claim to be one of those, but for my purposes, I think I make quite beautiful prints. And to my surprise, it's really not that hard. So since then, I've been printing my own portfolios. This is probably my 5th or 6th iteration now. And yeah, and just being able to do it on my own saves a lot of time and money. So these are double-sided, which also isn't that hard. As long as, you know, I do test prints on smaller pieces. I'll do like strip tests like you would in the darkroom, where let's say I have an 8.5 by 11 sheet of this paper. I'll run it through the printer, you know, with a little strip where basically, I'm sure a lot of you already know about this, but basically I'll crop a piece of the image in Photoshop that has a very bright area and a very dark area, just to make sure that my skin tone is right and that I have detail in my brights and darks. And I'll print that out. And that's a way of obviously being efficient with the amount of paper and ink that you're using, as opposed to printing 20 11/17s. That's gonna waste a lot of time and money, yeah. But, you know, printer registration on a higher end paper or higher end printer tends to be pretty darn good. So yeah, printing front and back has not proven to be any issue. But it's actually printed on 13 by 19 paper that then I cut down to, I believe it's around 11/14, something like 11/17, is it? All right, 11/17. I'll take your word. Yeah, you're right. But yeah, again, just having something like this just really, it's a certain level of professionalism that I want to portray myself as having. And I do think that that's very, very important. I do have an iPad as well for the times that I have work that I don't have time to get on here, or if I have a personal project. I just did this crazy road trip this summer from the UK to Mongolia. Drove 11,000 miles this summer, and in a small, horrible car. And you know, that's obviously a personal project that I've shot a lot of. And if you go to my Facebook or my Instagram. There's actually a bunch of photos you can check out from that. Outside Magazine just ran it last week. But yeah, so if there's a personal project that I'm not going to put in my formal print portfolio, I'll have that on my iPad, or if there's work that I just haven't had time yet to put on here, or that if it's just very different from this work, then I will have that in there. So pretty simple, straightforward.
I want to interrupt you a minute.
Please.
And ask you a question. You said something earlier that other photographers have said to me, other photographers that I have great respect for, as I do you. And I think it's worth revisiting, because when you do a print portfolio, those images have to be very special images. You never want to print a portfolio, as I understand it, that has filler.
No.
You want a portfolio where every single image is going to stand on its own and capture something that you want to say. So you said earlier that you print the images and sort of stick them up on the wall to see, and Michael Clark has told me this, other photographers have told me this, that this is how they decide what goes into their portfolio, because if 2 weeks from now that image is still exciting to him, that's a good image. But if he walks in one morning and this image is just annoying, down it comes. This is something new for me, so can you say more about that?
Well, it's, I don't know exactly what it is, but there is something so different about seeing your work in a printed form than on screen. There just is. Obviously on screen, you know, especially on a lot of the newer like 4K monitors and like an iMac or a MacBook Pro for that matter, the screens are essentially optimized to like watch movies. They're so bright and so vibrant that, you know, I think anyone's photos look great on screen. The second you take it off screen, it's a little bit different, right? Screens are backlit, so photos are always going to be a lot brighter and more colors are going to punch more, be more vibrant. So there's certain things, following profiles and certain, you know, ways of optimizing your files that enable you to make beautiful prints. But yeah, for me, yeah, it's a matter of getting photos off the screen. I have to the right of my desk in my studio this entire current iteration of my print portfolio. I have each of these photos printed less than 4x6, probably like 3x5 or so, and individually just thumb tacked onto the wall. And then I just swap those. If I have a new image I want to replace something, I can take this image and move it there, and I just constantly do that. Because a portfolio is something that is always progressing. Like this isn't gonna be my portfolio in a year. This might not be my portfolio in 6 months. It probably won't be the exact same iteration. So to me, it's all about constantly updating and staying fresh, and that pushes you to be a better photographer as well. So yeah, it's getting stuff. You know, I'm not talking about making poster-sized prints. Just make some small prints, get your work off screen, and start printing at home, because it's really not that hard. And get that work up there. I mean, you can there's a million different things to do. If you have an office space where you have, you know, depending on your level of seriousness or what have you, I mean, if you have an office space where you do all your photography work and your editing, you know, think about potentially putting up either a corkboard of some sort where you can put small printouts on, or they even sell they actually sell now magnetic primer. So you can paint that on the wall, paint over it, and actually use magnets. So you can use that, which is pretty cool, and you don't harm the wall like I do. My landlord must love me. And yeah, but I really, really encourage you. You'll be amazed the second you start to do that consistently, how differently you look at your work, how much more critically you look at your work. And again, I think that really will, in turn, help you to craft better photos.
Do you ever print sort of like proofs, even when you're going to deliver files, so that you can have that experience of seeing the image in print to really make a decision, to judge it, to think about the composition and so forth?
I do sometimes. Yeah, your mic is on, yeah? I don't need to repeat that? Perfect, okay. I do sometimes make prints to sort of proof something. For instance, I just shot an ad for a client of basically a girl on somebody's shoulders at a big music festival holding a can of a particular product. And it's a shot that was produced. I shot it from behind her on a stepladder in this concert field with 80,000 people. And there's the stage lights coming through. It's a really cool photo, but I shot it fairly high ISO. I think I shot it probably at like 3200. I didn't have any lighting. It was just a chaotic scene. And I needed to make sure, they're using this one particular frame they're going to be using potentially for an outdoor campaign worldwide for this company. So I need to make sure that that's going to produce very well. So in a case like that, yeah, I wasn't going to print it, billboard size, but I was zooming into the file and making different iterations and different crops to make sure that if I needed to apply any noise reduction, anything like that, if things were sharp enough, if the saturation was where I wanted it to be, the tonality, all of that stuff. So yes, sometimes I do test prints before I deliver something to a client, just depending on what it is. And as I said before, oftentimes my clients are editorial where I have very quick turnarounds. If I'm shooting for the AP, for instance, I'm expected to turn around files, generally speaking, within a couple of hours of shooting. So I shoot, go home, edit, deliver. And it's very, very fast. Anybody else?
All right. Well, let's give Drew a hand.
Cool. Thank you very much.
Whether you're a hobbyist or a professional, B&H has the answers to your questions. Experience a world of technology at our New York City superstore. Connect with us online or give us a call. Our staff of experts is happy to help.